project management has changed a lot in the tech industry, particularly in the digital industry, in the last sort of 3 or 4 years. So there's been a big move away from what's called waterfall project management, which is the assumption that you start one piece of work, you finish it, and then you start the next piece. That's a traditional waterfall. So if you see it on a project plan, it looks like this, basically. There's been a move away from that, and then there's been a move towards a project management methodology called Agile. So with Agile, what you do is every 2 weeks you meet and you plan for the next 2 weeks of work. And the idea is you remain flexible throughout. So every 2-week phase, you continually reassess what's gone right, what's gone wrong, what lessons you've learned, have a completely blameless culture. The entire team is involved in that meeting as well, so that everyone gets the same level of information and an ability to say that could be a problem or that isn't going so well. And then you plan it out and you do a thing called story point, in which you say how easy or difficult each incremental task is. And the idea of an Agile is that every single day you should be able to turn in a piece of information, a piece of work, whatever it might be. That then gives you a much quicker velocity to see if things are going wrong, because every day you're looking at the project and every day you've got something tangible to assess. And every 2 weeks, of course, you have a big show and tell where you show the client, stakeholders and product owners and so on and so forth. And that for me has been phenomenally transformative for the industry. So all of the government projects, NHS themselves, they're all working Agile now. BBC have been great exponents of Agile, and they've been actually one of the people who've been pushing it quite hard, and they've done a great job for me. But almost every project we work on now is run Agile, and almost every project we've worked on now hasn't been late, hasn't had those many problems, because if there is a problem, you see it every day, and every 2 weeks it's very much highlighted. So DevOps had quite wrongly been used as the end of a project. So in other words, what would happen, we're talking in the years ago here, so probably a decade ago, is you would design a website, you'd build it, you'd do the development work, this database work at the back end, and then you'd say, okay, let's find a host for this. Let's work out where it's going to go. Let's think about the security we need on it. Let's think about how data is handed around the system. Let's think about, all the governance around the project itself and the people using it. And that happened at the end. Whereas now the model has changed, and with project management now you often have different phases of a project that are pretty much industry recognised now. There's a discovery phase first, which is let's uncover all of the unknowns, let's write them all up, let's do spike investigations, let's understand what the DevOps requirements are for this project, let's do that all up front. Then you'd have an alpha phase, which is at the end of the alpha phase, you do not go live, but you have something presentable, usable, workable, that is in a state where you understand your direction of travel. Then you have a beta phase, and at the end of the beta phase, you would go live. So the idea is that by shifting things like DevOps into that first phase of discovery, you massively de-risk coming unstuck later down the line, when you realise that, okay, actually this is highly personal user data, this actually we need to spin up some conversion of video files into other formats, and that would have affected everything that had gone before. By doing it at the beginning, you've started on the right foot. I think, unfortunately, it is absolutely true to say that the IT industry is too male-centric, but there is lots happening to stop that. So we've worked with BBC and the Make It Digital campaign, and our own product we're making with them called mixatool.co.uk, and that is specifically targeting a much more diverse range of people who might choose digital as a career. So people of all backgrounds and of course both sexes are being promoted within those campaigns. It's traditionally been unfortunately true to say that there has been a split in digital career for particularly women. I found it's been horrible to watch, but it's been true that along the way that the female staff members have tended to go towards more of a creative or project management or account management approach, and the developers have either left or done something different. There's not many female developers that we've come across. There are, of course, some, and they're very talented, but they tend to be more based around the larger cities. So London, for example, there's a much better split. Manchester, there's a much better split. You start to go to the more rural areas, it's a much smaller number. So what we do as a company is we actually go and visit local universities and colleges, and we lecture there and try and actually explain that actually our industry is inclusive, and the reason that just because you haven't seen many female developers who you know doesn't mean you can't do it yourself. You know, just to try and sort of empower some younger girls into getting into the industry. But there is a lot happening, it's just happening a bit too slowly for my liking. I think that the change in schools at the moment to go back to a model that I enjoyed in the 80s is a great thing. So back in the 80s, we had a BBC Micro turn up at our primary school, and I remember very fondly trying to program a little computer game with like a little frog jumping over a log. I can't remember what it was, but I very much remember that point of seeing computers as not something that my dad worked on to write out spreadsheets and documents, but as being something I could create. And I think Raspberry Pi, the BBC Microbit, all of these things, Arduino boards, all these things that can take computing back to a playful place will really have a much more encompassing effect on all the people who might be interested in a career. As I said, the Mixer-Tool, the BBC Mixer-Tool project we're involved in at the moment is specifically designed around that as well. So that is learning through play. So on that project, kids of all ages can go onto the site, find what they call digital maker kits, make their own games, write their own stories, upload their own videos. They can actually make things, and in making it, the idea is they understand the possibilities of digital, and then later we're hoping to uncover areas where they can actually code their own maker kits as well, so to keep them on that journey. And I think anything at all that can mean that kids are playing with tech is a brilliant thing. I think that IT has definitely become a more person-centric place. So it used to be that IT was very much an organisation or business-centric place. I'm sure we all remember the kind of the 80s and 90s with corporate giants, and early 2000s, corporate giants like IBM, Microsoft, Apple, BBC, all the giants basically making products that we then use, where we had very little to do with the actual construction of them. That has definitely been a complete marked change, and I think the internet has been responsible for that, which is people power will out. Google proved that, of course, with their search engine, that you give something to people that you're constantly being informed by what they like, it's going to get better. And we've seen that ourselves on lots of the projects that we work on. So I mentioned before about the Mixer-Tool project. That's entirely designed around giving digital creativity to people, and well, young people in particular, and helping them on their career into digital or into anything creative actually. And those projects are becoming more and more commonplace. We are involved in any number of projects that help people. In fact, the company, when I founded it, was founded to work on what we call projects of worth. So something that delivers public value. So be that some of the work we've done with NHS, for example, where we help them launch their first commercial product, where all of the profits go back into patient care, or be that the Mixer-Tool project I just mentioned then, or even some of our own projects. We're working on one called De-Screen Me. The idea is trying to tackle screen addiction, and so that people can say, well, actually, I want to make sure that every day I spend a minimum of half an hour away from my phone. So they can set up a little reminder, hit go. If they try and pick up the phone during that time, it sort of gives them a little, don't do that, you said you wouldn't do it. And they can do things like pledge to take days away from their phone. And then what happened is the app will be able to work with their social media so that anyone who contacts them during that day will get an auto-responded message saying, Paul's out for the day, he's gone out of his family to Alton Towers to enjoy the rides. Why don't you take a screenless day as well? Let's move away from this model whereby you have to be staring at your phone. And what we'd love to do, and what I'd love to do, is eventually get products like that, so it can actually help get some behavioural change in us and help us live better lives. So that, as an example, if you used your phone for more than 2 hours without a break, it can just say, be responsible with your screen time, take a break away, because that's going to be possibly the biggest problem facing the next generation, is that they see a phone or they see a computer or they see a laptop or a tablet as their entry point to the world and not the actual world itself. Brexit, broadly I'm not a fan. I think Brexit's going to be a problem because for me the inherent issue that everyone seems to kind of keep revolving around is UK's position on a global playing field. We are it's saying, okay, we can make ourselves one of the big international players again. I think what we need to remind ourselves is we don't really make anything. There's nothing we can export. We're saying, okay, we can get these great trade deals. What are we actually trading? There's only two things the UK is really well known for, and that is the finance industry, which I think will be fine. I think, Britain and London particularly has been such a financial stronghold. I can't see that changing. And the other thing is the digital industry. We've been at the forefront of those two industries for quite some time now. Only really America and potentially some parts of Asia, but only really America actually and ourselves are really pushing the boundaries of digital in the way that is actually changing behaviour across the world. So I think it's a massive opportunity for international companies and international governments to work with the UK and learn from us. And if there's one thing I think we can export, it's our intelligence, our people and our products on an international basis. I can't see us starting to make cars again, or can't see us starting to make, whatever it might be, things we can actually physically trade. I think it's going to be a digital trade deal is the way to hopefully salve this otherwise quite abrasive rash. I think, and this is of course just a personal opinion here, but I think that there will be a big pushback against this more Republican, more authoritative way that the current administration in America will handle itself. So you've probably seen the protests and that there's a big pushback from the public saying, actually, we want power, you're only in power because we've put you in power, we're going to try and wrest that from you. So in terms of opportunities or the way things will change, I think there'll be a bunch of work happening in America to try and limit the power that certain areas of society have, and there'll be just as big, if not bigger, an opportunity to make sure that never happens. So I think if we've got people in the UK making tools that cut out the middleman, like I was saying earlier, so maybe some way of petition tools, for example, or sentiment tools, or some sort of tool that can collate events or protests, those things will just go off like wildfire. They'll become super powerful and super popular, particularly if, of course, they can hook into social media. I think actually the LGBTQ plus community is actually really well handled by the digital industry. Almost all of the companies that I've worked with and seen who work in digital have a very diverse range of staff, where sexual orientation has never been questioned. And it's never really been a thing. And we ourselves, I'm sure a lot of companies just don't care. It's not a thing for us. Are you a good person? Can you do your job? Has always been the watchwords that I've seen within the IT industry from my own perspective, from my own experience. It may be different if you're a technology company that's had perhaps a longer time in the industry than the last 20 years. Perhaps you've been around for 100 years. It might take a little bit longer to get on board. But I think actually I'm very, very proud of the IT industry because I've yet to come across discrimination in anything other than a positive way. With drones, I think there comes an opportunity and a problem. The problem is that drones can inherently do what humans have been doing for ages. A drone snooping is no different from a human being snooping. A drone taking a photograph over someone's back fence of something they shouldn't do. It's been happening for years with paparazzi. So I don't think drones are the problem, it's people's usage of them. And so I don't think drones are the issue. I think we need to basically, it's all around privacy law. It's all around places you can do certain things, like you wouldn't run into a church and start shouting and hollering at the top of your voice, because you understand the etiquette of where you are. And I think the same will come to pass with places and sites and big sightseeing attractions where people will say no drones allowed here, and that will just be an accepted thing, like no flash photography, no running and shouting, no eating food. It will just be another list on a little plaque somewhere. There will be a big change in drones. I think drones will start to become more of they'll take jobs, basically. They'll take delivery jobs. They will actually be a form of transport at some point. Whether they're still called drones, I don't know. But Amazon, of course, they're going for a driverless system. You know, they don't have people dropping off packages anymore. Drones will drop them off. That will be more and more the case. There will be definitely things we need to work out along the way, like what are our skies going to look like when there's hundreds of drones doing the job that, say, Royal Mail Parcel Force have been doing for years. But I inherently think the problem is people, not the technology.